How's it going, chumps? This is Common Filth Radio, episode 66. Thank you very much for listening. So to start off, I have some exciting news. I would like to announce the debut of Common Filth Extra over on Bandcamp. commonfilthradio.bandcamp.com is the location, and this is a new series that will upload every Monday to Bandcamp. And it will not affect the schedule of this show or Tumblristas at all. This is a new series, new content, nothing recycled from here. All brand new, and it's a new way you can support the show if you choose to do so. And of course, Tumblristas Raw Volume 3 came out last month. If you haven't bought it yet, go do that. It is some of the best stuff that I've ever put together. And to shill for one more thing before we get on with it, Amazon affiliate link for Americans, Amazon.com customers. Christmas is coming. You'll save a lot of time shopping on Amazon. Before you do that, click on the affiliate link below, search for your items, add to your cart, and check out within 24 hours, and I get a percentage of whatever you decide to buy. At no extra cost to you, by the way. From the Common Filth subreddit, r/CommonFilth on reddit.com, Video Game Massa, one of our faithful Reddit followers, posted a thread, and the title of the thread is "Pick About an Anon Who Gets a Pause Load from a Trap." Oh, and he added, "Holy shit, what people do just to not feel lonely." So let's read the screenshot that was included here. Somebody posted a thread on what seems to be 4chan. That feel one fell for the trap meme, and now I have HIV. Finally decided to download Grindr and hook up with a trap after 25 years of virginity and that feel when no girlfriend. Didn't use a condom because no pregnancy risk, and she told me she was a virgin. Just found out after going to the hospital for a bad flu. It happened to me. It happened to Charlie Sheen, and it can happen to you guys too. It's not worth it. Just stick to masturbating. It's literally the same thing as sex, but you'll never get sick. Oh my goodness. You know, I talk about this stuff. I know I make this point a lot, but I talk about what I talk about for a reason. Didn't I talk about it last week? Didn't I call out a certain group of people for going on about traps and never mind. But this is what happens. How are you surprised at this? You were on Grindr and you dipshit. You believed that she's a pure virgin who's on Grindr. I'm so lonely and I'm making bad decisions because I think that the company of another person will solve my problems. You think the company of another person will solve your problems? Because I don't know why. Now in retrospect, you're like, shit, I wish I would have just kept being lonely. At least I wouldn't have HIV. And the first reply for the wages of sin is death, which by the way is not me. For those of you wondering. And I think when I posted the link to the thread on Twitter, somebody, I don't remember who, if it was you, please say so. This is from HIVplusmag.com. Now, there's at least 2 different magazines dedicated to articles targeted towards people who live with HIV. You know, but they're just like you. They're just as healthy as you. Yeah, somebody sent this to me, and we're gonna poke through the rest of this site after I read this. Transgender women 49 times more likely to contract HIV, which is to say, men, or males rather. Again, men implies that you've done something to earn that distinction. The World Health Organization has released the results of a meta-analysis of data from 15 different countries showing that transgender women were nearly 49 times more likely to have HIV than the general population. Transgender women who were also not sex workers were also 9 times more likely to have HIV than trans women who were not sex workers, making them the most likely group to have HIV in the world. A lot of homophiles like to make this point, that cishetes are the number one reason why trans women are being murdered all the time, except it's not really all the time, and the ones who are being murdered are most likely involved in either the sex trade or some drug thing. In other words, pieces of shit. People who do not contribute anything to society but crime and danger and lowered property values. And you having to answer some very uncomfortable questions to your children. Which, by the way, answer them. Answer them with the, I don't know, I don't want to use any naughty words here, but anyway. Joanne Keatley, a transgender woman who works at the Center for Excellence for Transgender Health at University of California, San Francisco, told NPR that trans women had shockingly high risk of HIV because of discrimination and lack of healthcare. Oof, though. Fuck you. Joanne Keatley, who are you? I want to know what you look like, so in case I ever see you, I can yell at you. Discrimination and lack of healthcare. Oh my word. transhealth.ucsf.edu. We're loading here, hold on. And I didn't lose my train of thought. I didn't lose the thought that I had about how these homophiles are always blaming cis people for, oh, there's a holocaust, a trans holocaust. Anyway, Joanne Keatley, MSW, Director, Center of Excellence for Transgender Health at the University of California, San Francisco. She received a Master of Social Welfare degree from the University of California, Berkeley. I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised at that. At UCSF since 1999, she directs the Center of Excellence for Transgender Health, a capacity building and technical assistance center. Joanne is the co-investigator on the new HRSA SPNS Transgender Evaluation and Technical Assistance Project. During the last decade, she has directed multiple federally funded research, your tax dollars at work, everyone, and HIV prevention projects, and has consulted on transgender health at the NIH, CDC, HRSA, HSA, and at the White House. This red-haired woman, this proud white woman, 1488, we have to preserve a future. Joanne has received numerous awards and recognition, including the first staff recipient of the UCSF Chancellor's Award for LGBT Leadership, and in 2009, the UCSF Martin Luther King Jr. Staff Award for advancing cultural diversity and social justice on campus. In 2011, she was honored by Kaiser Permanente with the National HIV/AIDS Diversity Award. I talked about Kaiser Permanente, I believe, in one of the episodes of Common Filth Extra. And if I'm not remembering correctly, Kaiser Permanente is a highly irresponsible organization. I'll just leave it at that. Now I'm clicking around on their Twitter and Facebook links. Oh yeah, I have more Twitter followers. Go me. And they retweeted something. Healthy Divas is grounded in the gender affirmation model, whatever the hell that means, that HIV prevention interventions should be empowering and affirming of gender ID. That first and foremost, not preventing it from happening in the first place. Learn how we work to improve trans health. The COE is currently implementing 4 major programs for the transgender community, which apparently revolves heavily around the exchanging of gifts. Lots of gifts being exchanged. Is it ever thought in anybody's mind? No, of course it isn't. It's never thought in anybody's mind that people only get HIV by behaving in incredibly irresponsible ways. Let's go back to the original article that we read from HIV Plus Mag, rather. We have a quote here. Let me scroll back up. We see this repeated all over the world, Keatley said. Transphobia is alive and well in many societies around the globe, and we see it play out in terms of verbal and physical violence, as well as denial of employment or education or familial support, or all kinds of ways in which transgender people are marginalized. Well, why don't you give up your job? You're a brave trans woman. Go on, give it up. Give it up. Spread the wealth. Isn't that what social justice is all about? Oh, we have comments here. Using the word, this is from, I don't even know. I'm not even using their names. Using the word transgender is really offensive and doesn't point out which subgroup of the supposed umbrella term is really the most HIV problematic. Is it the heterosexual and homosexual full and part-time cross-dressers that may or may not opt for surgery, including hormones and gender reassignment surgery? Or is it the transsexuals? According to LGBT activists and those promoting the word transgender, they are one and the same, but they are not. And then we have a discussion thread extending from this. In the actual community, trans plus or trans star, whatever the hell that means living as the other gender. CD means performing as it, which I guess means cross-dressing. Now, notice how they're discussing the finer points of this. This has become so ingrained in their lives so deeply ingrained in their lives that they feel comfortable discussing the finer points. They feel comfortable discussing semantics, which means that they view the premise of it as acceptable. Is this the world you want? That's a legitimate question. I feel so bad for people who bring children into the world not knowing what the culture now takes for granted. Either they're oblivious to it, or they actually like it. Wow, if my kid grows up to be an HIV patient, they'll be so accepted. Let's read more of the comments. And here's actually one that's got some grain of thought to it. One bit of thought, one bit of truth to it. And the comment goes like this: lack of healthcare does not lead to HIV. It's lack of following preventative measures that lead to HIV. Being on the receiving end of anal sex without a condom is the number one way of contracting HIV. These transgender women aren't insisting that their partners use a condom. Pointing out that anal sex is the best way to transmit it has been swept under the rug in the name of being politically correct. But clearly that has been a dangerous movement. Oh my word. And then there's somebody who has squeaky chair. Somebody who has old Christian art as their profile picture and whatever their cover. I don't know what they call it. Lack of health care does not lead to HIV. This is well and truly the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Access to testing and treatment hugely decreases new cases of HIV because people are willing to get tested and begin treatment. People living with HIV who are on medication and receiving appropriate medical care have a vastly decreased chance of giving the virus to anyone else because controlled HIV is less contagious. Lack of healthcare does not... Fucking hell. Are you stupid? Are you fucking retarded? Lack of healthcare does not lead to HIV. This is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Oh, what? The doctor's gonna be there? Don't do that. Give me a fucking break. This is how people think. You're looking at the unfiltered thoughts of the average person right now. You're listening to it. Anyway, look what is taken for granted. Unacceptable behaviors taken for granted. Sure, it's now ingrained, embedded in our culture, and there's no getting it out. Anyway, what does this say? In addition, healthcare includes preventative measures such as PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, where you take a tablet every day to prevent you from acquiring HIV, sort of like how taking the contraceptive pill every day prevents pregnancy. And PEP, post-exposure. Again. All of these things come after the fact of very irresponsible behavior, which is probably why Kaiser Permanente is promoting it. In case you missed it, which apparently you did, trans women sex workers are the most vulnerable to acquiring HIV, which means there's a problem with how sex workers are treated by police, health officials, and the general public. This person's a demon, by the way. hiding behind her Christian iconography or whatever the fuck it is. Tainted. Beauty has been tainted. There's no such thing as innocence anymore. I sometimes wish I could unlearn all of this shit that I've come across. I really wish I could. I really wish I could go back to being simple and doing something simple. But you can't go back. I can't go back. What else does it say? Which means there's a problem with how sex workers are treated by police, health officials, and the general public. Oh, no shit. We need to protect these people and treat them right. Treating them right would be get the fuck out of my neighborhood. Get the fuck out of my city. Get the fuck out of my life. Even if you are on the fringes of it. Get out. Leave. What good ever came from having pimps and hookers in your neighborhood? Regardless of whatever fucked up thing they have going on in their head. It's the most dysfunctional people that purchase prostitutes. It's the most dysfunctional people that work as pimps. It's the most dysfunctional people who work as prostitutes. None of this brings any good to anybody. Just ask the guy on 4chan. I think that's where the screenshot came from. The color scheme's right. Fell for the trap meme. And he posted, there's like a little part of this. Human immunodeficiency virus. HIV antibody. Positive. And we'll go back to that comment. Transgender women, particularly transgender women of color, are routinely harassed by police and arrested for solicitation just for walking down the street. Well, you have to go by precedent. It's kind of how our legal system works. You see somebody who fits the bill, you ask some questions. How are women meant to carry and use condoms when they're already harassed by police and condoms are used as evidence of prostitution/solicitation? Because it fucking is. It is evidence, you fuck. Any country that's serious about preventing new cases of HIV needs to decriminalize sex work completely. Are you fucking kidding me? Are we that far gone? Where we want to, where we find the selling, the exchange of money for animal pleasures, we find that acceptable. That's where our hearts and minds are located. In the realm, wherever the hell this takes place. No. That is what we are. That is who we've become. That is not a question. That is no longer a question. That is the answer. And if you want to be oblivious to this, fine. You want to go discuss the finer points of legislation. You want to go make a homeland for your people in my documents, go ahead. You can go live there and pretend like this won't infect that place. Because you carry it with you. Talking about the dangers of deviancy after Paris and San Bernardino is barbaric. And if you want to hear me elaborate on that, Commonwealth Extra, episode 1 and episode 2. Which, by the way, there's going to be one new episode every week. This week, starting it off with 2, getting a head start on the episode count. So, yep. From now on, it will be released on Monday and one episode a week. So, being that we're here, which, by the way, I do want to read this last comment. A condom before the fact is better at protecting one from HIV. Is better than receiving anal, then taking a test to find out whether you are infected. I don't know why people like you get so angry over common sense. I agree. That is, it's excellent points. Alright, here's the top of their page. Watch, hashtag I'm Positively episode 3, with Melina Fisher. The cure. Anti-alcohol drug could flush out HIV. The Elizabeth Taylor Byers Club, we never knew. I don't know what that is. Study. 1 in 3 young gay men have HIV here. Dating apps partly to blame. But only partly. I actually agree with that. It is only partly. HIV Year in Review in their print issue. Is there a Sheen effect impacting HIV testing and prevention? Oh man, to view life through this lens is a special kind of hell. Wouldn't you agree with that? What else? What else you got? World Health Organization, red processed meat causes cancer. What, this is what you're worried about on HIVplusmag.com? Does HIV affect cognitive abilities? Adult film star J.D. Phoenix on sex, meth, and his steamy prep education video. Michael Lucas on Prep for Love video HIV prevention campaign. Michael Lucas, I think, was the guy we read the Piss Mansion thing about last week. Prep for love. Prep for an enema. Oh, fuck. And, yeah, I just paused to cross-check, and yeah, it's him. It is him. They're using gay pornography to sell HIV prevention. Now, what does that tell you about the people who consume this shit? That they'll only listen if their favorite porn stars tell them to. And even then, maybe. Meet the man behind the controversial I Like to Party gay HIV campaign. Why do all these people look like aliens? That's what I want to know. Their print issue. Straight out of time. HIV in the black community. Plus, Eazy-E's legacy. Black gay men and depression. Switching meds saved my life. I really hope that this guy's just like some... fuck it, never mind. I'm not even going to think about it. But how does that make you feel if you're a black man? That these people want to be united with your struggle. Whatever that struggle may be. Watch, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, speaks out for World AIDS Day. Okay. The most iconic AIDS posters of the last 30 years, and it's a Chihuahua being suffocated by a condom. I'm just reading the titles here. The transgender HIV epidemic on the Tea with Dr. D, episode 3. Hashtag ask Tyler. What if he's lying about being undetectable? Watch how real pause people are living with treatment. They're using our words. Watch, will we still eat meat in the future? Why the fuck are you people so concerned about meat? Oh, wait. Maybe you should have been concerned about it before the infection. Jenny McCarthy won't back down on HIV statements. I don't know what that means, and I don't... The LA LGBT Center asks, what are you into? And it's another black guy. How do you feel about that, Black America? That these people so desperately want to be united with you in your struggle. Makes you feel good, doesn't it? I should probably get to questions and comments before it gets too late, or I get too tired, or I start laughing about how absurd all of this nonsense is. So we'll do Reddit questions or comments /common filth as always. Hey CF, a 17-year-old listener from Scotland here, and I wanted to ask you a question. I'm finding myself at times unable to mentally cope with the suffocating degeneracy I am subjected on a day-to-day basis. Almost everybody I know is a degenerate, from my socialist politics teacher to reality TV parents, and friends who take up smoking because it's cool. I find myself in a vast field up to my knees in human shit. My world seems devoid of decent people, leading me to live a schizoid lifestyle. I would like to ask you this. How do you mentally cope with the huge amount of human trash that one is exposed to on a nearly daily basis? I find that it affects me in a very negative way, and I don't know what to do or how to deal with it. Danke, sir, for your work thus far, as it has meant much to me. I don't know where I would be today if not for your, among other people's, work. I don't know how I mentally cope with it because confronting it is that's what I do. This whole channel is oriented around confronting the human shit. And you might be deeper in it than a lot of us are. And for that, I'm very sorry. And of course, thank you for your kind words. I guess that is how I deal with it. I confront it. I formulate an argument. I think about this stuff all the time. I think about how can I better convince people to my point of view. That's how I cope with it. That is how I move away the shit. That is how I am away from its influence. That's how I get away from its influence. I understand fully that the situation you are in is difficult, and it's even more so because you're young. Because you can voice your concerns about the situation you are in. You can voice your concerns with your parents and friends about the nonsense they do. Yet they won't view you as a moral authority, so they'll just keep doing it. They'll just think like, oh, I know better than you. Either because I'm older or because you're no fun. That'll be the reasoning. All of these stuff you're talking about, it affects you in a very direct way. A more direct way than how the trash I expose myself affects me because it's secondhand, third-hand, whatever. It's usually behind a computer screen. It's just I'm able to connect it with prevailing social trends. All of this bizarre dysfunction that we think is on the fringes of society when in reality, it is enabled by people's notions, attitudes, behaviors, the way they vote, the way they buy, you name it. That's how it affects me, because I see how it all ties together. So if you're miserable, you don't know what to do, I would wager that anything would be better than status quo. You could try confronting it. I'm not going to guarantee that this course of action is what's going to cure it, but if you're miserable, you got to try something. Because I don't think it's going to get any better with you just tolerating it. So find a way to put your intolerance into action and make life better in any way you can. Hello, CF, 19-year-old listener here. I've been listening to your podcast for several months now, and I must say it's been quite the wild ride since the very start. Even though I was your run-of-the-mill Albertarian, euphoric atheist when I first heard your show, your completely objective interpretation of modern trends and collected delivery still managed to draw me in. Over these months, I've found myself challenging nearly every view I previously held as concrete, and in the process have made some of the greatest decisions in my early life. I've kicked a nasty masturbation habit that has stuck with me since a young age. I'm in the process of converting to Christianity. I found a girlfriend who was raised in a Christian household with strong traditional values. Seems like prime marriage material so far. I'm about to rent out a townhouse with her and some close friends in January to start building credit, and have left university to pursue a potentially lucrative computer programming position after years' worth of deliberation and serious consideration. If it were not for your radio show, I would still be the same apathetic faggot I was all those months ago, and none of these life-changing events would have happened. There really is no way for me to express how grateful I am for the time and effort you put into producing the show, but I figured the least I can do is let you know that even though it often may not seem like it, you are changing people's lives for the better. You're not just preaching to the choir. I can only hope that more people that started out like myself can come to know your works and finally see past this liberal lens that's unknowingly forced onto all of us in our most impressionable years. That being said, one of your most recent shows touched very briefly on your opinions about child labor laws, and I must say I'm a bit disappointed you didn't go into more details about the subject. To explain my background a bit, I've been studying and practicing computer programming for around a decade now. I started off by just reading a lot online about how to program in various languages, and found that I could make some pocket money by programming websites for small businesses owned by some of my father's friends. This went on until I was 15 when I was able to land a position at a local furniture store to design an application to more easily keep track of inventory on the sales floor. It was a single project job and the firm didn't need me for anything else following the implementation of it. A year later, I landed a job at a firm that develops requisition management software as a systems developer and application automation specialist, writing bots to generate test data for demos, which was a legitimate 9-to-5 desk job. I was only able to work there in the summer, but in total they hired me for 3 consecutive summers, which brings me to where I am now. A man who is friends with my father approached me with his emerging business, offering me ground-level seats as the main programmer and co-owner of a company marketing a relatively ambitious but definitely feasible software package. I can't give specifics here, but it has a lot of potential and many businesses and shareholders are interested in the concept and prototype we have so far. Finally, my question, do you think there's a way that early apprenticeships or some similar program that starts in childhood could be reintroduced into America and the rest of the first world? I've been considering this question ever since the thought of leaving college ever entered my head, as the whole time I was paying enormous sums of money to learn what I already knew in order to get a paper that is supposed to get me jobs I'm already being offered, with the only reason being that my parents were under the impression that I would be a complete failure if I didn't get a college degree. I really don't think I'm some sort of special case, and I honestly think more people could work their ways into lucrative fields without amassing large amounts of debt to institutions influenced, if not run, by the notorious hand-rubbing tribesmen, if only they started working towards it in their more formidable years. Please pardon the absurd length of this question. I'm not very good at being concise. Well, thank you for sending me this question. Thank you for taking the time to write it. You've accomplished a lot, and you are an example of what youth is capable of doing if they are left to develop. If they are left to develop outside of the academic environment. I'm of the opinion that academia destroys any passion, destroys any drive. It destroys any yearning for creativity, for production. And I have my suspicions as to why this is. I don't have any specific examples I can provide. It's just a gut feeling. But I don't think there is a way that traditional apprenticeships can be reintroduced because so much of our economy is tied up in education, telling people information they can easily access on their own. And a huge reason why the educational industrial complex is so large, why it commands such a large part of the American economy, is because of people like your parents. They don't understand the purpose of modern education is to obtain a skill. Yet very little of what university provides actually equips you with a useful, marketable skill set. Which is precisely what you have. You're getting work, people recognize that you have a skill set and they want to put it to use. Because you can make a company money with it. But no, that apparently is not good enough for some people. Even though that's the end goal, you just took a shortcut because you did it on your own. You didn't need professors. You didn't need prerequisite bullshit classes. You didn't need to pad the salary of some retard whose only skill in life is bitching about colonization and telling you where to put a period in a sentence. And these subhumans are the individuals who are preventing an apprenticeship culture from truly forming again. Individuals who bitch about Wall Street and bank greed, bankster greed, yet they're the greediest motherfuckers on the planet. They have a job that can easily be done by anybody with a skill set, yet they think they're owed an existence because I am in the academic environment and it's much more effective. Yeah, it's much more effective to lecture to a class of 30, 40, 50, 100 kids. Yeah, that's way more effective than one-on-one training. It's effective for spreading propaganda, but not so much if you want to create useful citizens. But They are useful. These students are useful to the teachers because these students will be like, yeah, they really get me. I'm going to vote in a way that gets them a salary increase. I'm going to vote in people who are going to do that. And the cycle goes on and on and on. So no, the apprenticeship thing, it won't ever exist on a grand scale. It won't, because there's far too much money to be made in academia. Now, I think academia makes up $1 trillion out of the $16 trillion of the American economy. It's absurd. $1 trillion oriented around telling people shit. Is George Zimmerman a national treasure? Will you ever write again? I know you've said you didn't enjoy writing very much in the past, but I thought your blog was home to some good stuff. George Zimmerman reminds me a lot of the individuals that write into this show. People seeking advice for their personal life. People who are telling me about the terrible people, the terrible friends they have, the terrible family members. And the reason why George Zimmerman reminds me of these folks is because he seems to have a very bad judge of character. He seems to be very troubled because he surrounds himself with not very good people, people who seem to only want to test his patience. Yeah, I recently got suspended from Twitter for exposing some chick who he said slept with a Muslim, and he posted her personal information. Yeah, you got to have a good judge of character, or you're not going to have a very happy life. And I get it. It was made worse because some really fucked up things happened to him with regard to the legal system. He got railroaded by the Obama administration. They wanted to make an example out of him. And will I write again? The microphone's my home. This is where I belong. Look, I can't read some of these next questions. I can't read them because it's like you said I said it, and then I can neither confirm nor deny that I said it because I'm not the only one added as admins on my Facebook pages. So, out of curiosity, do you ever plan on having Andrew Anglin of Daily Stormer on your radio show? Look, the problem with having these white nationalist guys, me associating with them, is because I've said publicly at this point that I think that white nationalism is tainted by a very disturbing fetishism. And I'm not backing down from that because I know who makes it up. It's like, look, I don't have anything against this guy particularly, but I've said things that some people might not like, so... Next, I was wondering if you could talk a little on this article. What basically happened is a guy called a feminist slut on Facebook. She proceeded to dox him and get him fired from his job. Personally, I don't think anything you say online should have any effect on your job, so long as you aren't claiming to represent the views of the company that you work for. What is your opinion? Well, last week I gave some advice. I said that somebody should try to get some people fired. And I'm only saying that because that's the world we live in. That the world we live in, that's allowed, where you can get people fired for what they do. But the only difference between that piece of advice is that the situation was there are people misbehaving at work. They're creating a hostile, disruptive work environment. And you saying stuff online, you typing things online, you sharing your opinions online, that's not in the workplace, so you're not disrupting it. It's not as if you're talking politics or social or cultural issues at the water cooler. Look, I can understand if that's disruptive because people feel very strongly about that. It seems now more than ever. Also, something we have to consider, people who belong to corporations, they think that people who have the wrong opinions, people who call demons by their correct name, that's a problem. That creates a disruptive work environment, even though it may never manifest itself in the corporate environment. That's what being a corporate automaton teaches you. It teaches you how to be afraid of everything. It teaches you how to watch your own ass. It teaches you how to lie. It teaches you how to call a demon everything except its correct name. Next, Long-time listener, had two questions what they're related, so hopefully they don't take up too much time. I'm dating a younger Christian girl that I met in high school for about 1.5 years. Her parents were weak Christians at the time and the mom ran the house. She was into Tumblr and some degenerate shit, but eventually I called her out on it, and she seems to be pretty okay with my political views. For reference, she's a little more than 2 years younger than me. I'm a freshman in college now. She's a virgin as far as I can tell, attending a private Christian school. Takes very well to a male lead and is pleasant to be around, moderately attractive, not a cheerleader or anything. In episode 65 and in previous episodes, I feel like you showed a lot of hostility towards guys who want to date younger, especially a guy who wrote in about enjoying hanging out with younger girls because they seemed a lot more innocent and able to enjoy more basic things compared to older women, and I can kind of relate to that. Well, first off, I'm only hostile to hanging out with girls who you have no reason to be loyal to. And by that I mean taking them, doing nice things, hanging out with them, going out of your way to hang out with the nice things. Unless it's your daughter, unless it's your sister, you shouldn't be going out of your way to hang out with preteen girls. That is all I'm saying. Not all older women are degenerate trash, but it seems like an unbelievable number of women over the age of 25 I approached are single mother trash with live-in boyfriends and drug addictions. And it's kind of hard to compare this to my young girlfriend who wanted to watch Frozen with me. At the time, she was 14, so we've been together for some time. To sum up, number one, do you approve of Christian guys dating younger girls if they're non-degenerate? And in my situation specifically, do you think this girl is worth keeping around if she maintains good behavior? Or is a former Tumblrista an instant red flag? Well, I've made the distinction between a practical Tumblrista and a Tumblrista in name only. Let's just use that term. If she acted upon it in any meaningful way, then no, you should avoid her. You should absolutely avoid her. If she just has some stupid opinions that don't seem to be incredibly informed or backed up by anything, that can be fixed. I believed some stupid shit when I was younger too. It just comes with the territory. And you would just hope that she's able to grow out of it. And if you are a solid judge of character, you can make that determination for yourself. And I'm sorry if anybody took it this way, but I don't think that it's entirely inappropriate for an 18-year-old to be dating a 16-year-old so long as the 16-year-old's parents are okay with it. I don't think that there's that significant of a gap between the mentality of a 16-year-old and a mentality of an 18-year-old. I think the rule is like half your age plus 7 if you're a guy dating females. I think that's a pretty good rule. I just think that it's not appropriate for a guy to be hanging out with girls younger than his girlfriend if his girlfriend is of that age, because beyond that, that's pushing it. I mean, even if the relationship isn't inappropriate sexually, it's still not appropriate. It isn't. 2. In relation to number 1, do you feel that slutty women who spent their youth riding the cock carousel and suddenly convert after Dick 67 and claim to be born-again virgins are full of shit, or are they onto something? I personally shake my head whenever I hear about a preacher who presided over a wedding between a whore and some poor beta she managed to drag out. I've never heard of these marriages working well, but when I brought up with an old friend, the elderly librarian at our old high school, and she said that a man should forgive her and marry her. I'm afraid many other Christians hold this same opinion. Your thoughts? Well, they might view the fact that she's now getting married after Cock 67 a form of repentance, but it's not. She's cashing in. She realizes, well, I'm getting kind of older. I'm not attracting the attention I used to. I no longer have that power over men. Might as well cash in, get a guy who'll put up with my bullshit, and he's got some money. So I get alimony, yay, when I get bored. So yeah, you shouldn't listen to these people. It's like, look, I understand if you make one mistake, but if you make 67 mistakes, that's not, you're unrepentant. You should not forgive the unrepentant. And that's what these older Christians are failing to realize. You cannot have forgiveness without repentance. It is impossible. It is suicidal to forgive the unrepentant. It's the same thing with college. Oh yeah, we get to go to the commencement ceremony. Here's a B-list celebrity making the commencement speech. Yeah, we get to go to a wedding. She's no longer a whore. No, that's not the end of the story. You think there's a happy ending? There is no happy ending. There's no happy ending with these people because they're just going to relapse into their old ways. The divorce statistics support this. That with each partner, the likelihood of divorce increases by a lot. And no, marriage is not repentance for your previous sins. It's not. Because it's no longer a religious institution. It is no longer filtered through the church. It is simply a cash grab. That's what it is. Either that or, look, we're gay married. We're not degenerate. Tee hee hee. Yeah, I'm supposed to believe that when most gay marriages, according to the New York Times, so they're underreporting this. Most gay marriages, it hurts me to even say that. Fucking lie. Yeah, most of them are open marriages. They're incapable of monogamy. Hey CF, who's your favorite rapper and why is it DMX? My favorite rapper is actually Trillium. Check out his SoundCloud. Were you being serious when you mentioned catching airborne AIDS in West Hollywood? Also, your guess as to when Obama is going to start the Order 66 roundups executions of prominent opposition. Well, he doesn't have a whole lot of time. How much longer does he? He only has like 13 months left in office, so I don't think a whole lot is going to happen. And as for being serious about airborne AIDS, no, I was not being serious, but West Hollywood is a cesspool demographically. Okay. 16-year-old from Australia here. I wanted your opinion on the whole situation regarding my family and what's happened lately. In August, around the end of the month, my grandmother, mother's mother, died due to internal bleeding in hospital, which left the family I live with and interact with devastated, except for my sister. Around that time, my sister was dating a Tumblr dyke, both 14, and she had some mishaps at home and ran away around 2 weeks before my grandmother's death. She stayed where I live around a week before her mother, father, and friend barged into my house and was resisting to go home. Eventually, the police had to get dragged into it, and they were all well aware of her and her parents. So when my grandmother passes, my sister and her scheme into getting her to legally move in around that time, she stole $1,000 from her parents and stashed it here. They went on spending sprees on clothes and eventually sex toys, vibrators, strap-on, and didn't think the degeneracy extended that far for 14-year-olds. Learned that sister's girlfriend had sex with around 3 different guys before probably throwing a hot dog down the hallway there. Snooped around, found it was an 8-inch strap-on, just smaller than a Coke can, girth-wise. Oh my god. Anyway, degeneracy continues for a few weeks that turn into 3 months whilst mother couldn't do anything after being so devastated, and sister's girlfriend moving in the same day she died, and such, which is honestly just disgusting. Fast forward about a month ago, she makes amends with her family and moves back in, learning she's getting a door with the lock for her room, and now recently her room is being renovated. Seems her mother is bending over backwards for her now, and she got what she wanted. She broke up with my sister since she's done leeching off my family. She didn't pay any bills, ate a shitload of food and such, and just hightailing out of my sister's life. I'm left with the brute of an overly emotional 14-year-old and grieving mother who recently has been staying over at my grandmother's to make amends with her wrongdoings to her. Sorry for the long story, just wondering your thoughts, because it's now a finished book about their relationship. I'm not going to go into detail, but it was a wild ride, and I'm glad it's done. God bless you, and hope for more episodes for a long time. I have no thoughts other than what the fuck. What the fuck? Why are these girls making their own decisions? Especially a 14-year-old girl. And who made this decision? Your mom? Yeah, great argument for women's suffrage. What is it with girls and women and homosexual worship? I do not understand this. I never will. Unless somebody can explain it to me in a way that I'll actually believe. I don't get it. I really don't understand. But my thoughts are, demons, Satan, everywhere. There's nothing to say. It speaks for itself. Why is everyone so broken? Did you ever suffer from fuck you mom and dad syndrome in your younger years? I've talked about this before. To some minor extent, yeah. Because there's something in the adolescent brain that breaks when the brain reaches adolescence. The adolescent brain becomes more concerned with conforming to society's standards rather than the standards of their parents, because you mistakenly believe that society somehow knows better than your parents, when maybe neither really has a clue, but you should stick with what you know. So I've talked about it. It's not a matter of avoiding the phase. It's a matter of growing out of it, and a disturbing amount of people never grow out of it. Not a question per se, but I felt this was worth sharing. Yeah, I didn't. I clicked on it, but the link was unavailable, so I cannot know what you are talking about. So I apologize for that. I'm not stopping recording to get into my email here, and we'll do email now. Hey CF, I like to check out the users from Tumblristas and see what other degenerate shit they post, and found this. Okay. Sexualities and genders, and other terms one should know. Heterosexual male identifying individual sexually attracted to a female identifying individual. You know, I'm pretty sure that intellect is now defined by making simple shit as complicated as you possibly can. That's what intellect is now. And also, look, we're going against the stereotype. We're contradicting the stereotype, because that totally has the basis in reality. That's what smart people do. They go and work for ad agencies. They go work on sets of commercials where never mind. Homosexual, someone attracted to someone of the same gender as themselves, for fuck's sake. What else? Pansexual. This hurts my brain to read, because it's written in the most autistic way you could possibly imagine. Androromantic, gynoromantic, demiromantic, polyamorous, acoeromantic. Someone who experiences romantic attraction but doesn't wish to act upon it or for it to be reciprocated. So we have to define words. We have to give a different word to restraint now. Yeah, that word already exists, and it's called restraint. And this is the first from the same blog from episode 29, talking about gray asexual or some shit. What is concerning is that there are 338,938 notes on this. Nearly 500,000 people at least believe this bullshit. These truly are dark times. On a more positive note, I am thinking of starting a sock puppet Tumblr blog to try and introduce even more ridiculous crap into the fold, and shame these types for being exclusionary. Something like quantum gender theory or multidimensional gender, and introduce math equations into it. Partly because it would be hysterical to know that mentally ill people come out as something I made up, but more importantly to bring their movement further into the realm of absurdity, so that people with some semblance of a soul will never be able to take it seriously if they already do. Do you think this is a good idea? Well, look, the reason why I would advise against this is because they're already going to do infighting. They're already going to most likely do similar to what you're saying. And I understand the intent. You want to make them look more absurd, but by doing that, you're going to make other deviant things, other real things like HIV plus MAG and associated allies, you're going to make them look normal by comparison, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is connect this with more mainstream deviancy. And we want to connect it because that's what's true. All of these kids want to be some variety of homosexual. Because who exists? Who has the status of beyond reproach? Who has the status of beyond reproach in our culture right now? It's not me or you. It is the homosexual. You cannot say anything negative about them without risking some severe consequences. I'm sure they're all shrieking with delight that the products of these breeder bigoted cishets are turning against them and turning towards the other team. They want it. They want to be a part of the other team, and they will go through very elaborate means to get there. Next. Hey, CF, you probably don't remember me, but I've written before. I do. Not so much a question as it is a request, but in the same vein. You always talk about the fallacy that is, well, it doesn't affect you, but you don't really expound upon it. I understand why, since time constraints. Sorry, tongue-tied. But I can't, for the life of me, find the episode where you explain why it's such bullshit. When I talk to friends and family about political stuff, while they're all mostly right-leaning, a lot of them fall back on, well, I don't like it, but it doesn't affect me, so what can I do? But I can't articulate a rebuttal as well as you did. Honestly, what you said is hands down one of the most eye-opening things I've ever heard, and if I could just properly articulate it, I think it's an argument that could sway a lot of people who feel rather hopeless about fighting degeneracy like it did to me. I know it's kind of a weird request, but if you could explain the reasoning behind, yes, unchecked rampant degeneracy does affect us, I would really appreciate it. Thanks, and God bless. I am actually trying to find that clip myself. I am about 60% done with compiling Common Filth, the best of Common Filth Radio, the best of 2015, and it will be included in that collection, but if I end up finding the segment you have in mind, I will send you an email telling you which episode to find that in. And I wish I had the monologue I did about that memorized. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but in essence, it does affect you. That's basically the take-home message, and I gave the reasons why. And I'll just say how I feel about it now. It does affect you because the forces you aren't interested in are very, very interested in you. They work in your schools. They work in corporate jobs. Everywhere. These people who hold these ideas, who engage in the worst, most unacceptable forms of behavior, you deal with them. You give them money. They give you change. They make you go to meetings. They make you undergo sensitivity training. They turn your children against you. You look them in the eye. You take their phone calls. You answer their emails. Everywhere. Everywhere you go, every action you take, their tentacles are all over it. It doesn't affect you is simply a coping mechanism. One that is a lie. And once you confront this fact, that the mantra of it doesn't affect you is a lie, you have to make a decision. Am I going to tolerate being lied to? Am I going to tolerate lying to myself? Am I going to tolerate the intolerable? Or am I going to take action? But if I find the clip that you have in mind that you are specifically writing about, I will let you know. Because once I hear it, I'll know. Next, do you think it is for the best not to label yourself with certain ideologies or political parties, for example? Saying things like, oh, I am a Democrat or I am a Republican allows you to be lumped into a certain group or be responsible for the opinions or behaviors of less desirable people in said groups. As cringy as it sounds, would just identifying as yourself be the best option? Don't identify as anything. Simply state your opinions. Because people are going to lump you into a group regardless of whether you do it yourself. So state the opinion and let them say what they want. Because they're going to anyway. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I can't believe there's a book called I Can't Believe I'm Sitting Next to a Republican, which is a good book. I recommend it. Also, thank you for your take on repentance. It put some things in perspective for me and allowed some deeper insight on my part. God bless. Well, you're welcome. Next, hello CF. A while ago, I watched a documentary that was made in the 90s called Chicken Hawk, Men Who Love Young Boys. I'm wondering if you've ever seen it. It was on YouTube, but I'm not sure if it's still there. I'm familiar with it, but I have not watched it. It has been recommended to me, though. Anyway, the documentary was about a few members of NAMBLA, which is the, if you don't know what NAMBLA is, NAMBLA stands for North American Man-Boy Love Association. I think I got that right. Anyway, the documentary was very chilling to me as these people featured in the film have the same mentality as the LGBT community does with love is love. There was a particular scene in the movie that made me laugh, and it struck out the most to me. NAMBLA members went to DC for a National Gay Pride rally and wanted to be in the parade. They were rejected, obviously, and non-NAMBLA members in the Hee Hee parade were interviewed. They all had the typical response of how this doesn't represent the community, and as a gay man, I'm appalled by their actions. See, as a gay man, it's always filtered through that lens. This got me thinking, though. It's been over 20 years since the film was made, and the LGBT community's sick actions are now coming into light, more with the internet booming. Since gays are already such a small minority, and now an even smaller minority in T are now becoming more accepted in the community, do you think the gay pedophiles will become accepted into the LGBT community in the future? I think so personally because they already piss and shit on each other, on each other, and bug chasing is booming, and it's only going to get worse. Also, do you watch any other wrestling besides WWE, and who is your favorite wrestler? That's quite a leap from one to the other. Yeah, during the 90s, the gays were more politically active, and they realized that being associated with NAMBLA, as they once were, would compromise their goals, the gay agenda. But in reality, the gay rights movement as a political entity had its foundations in this man-boy love shit. The original gay rights charter calls for the abolition of all age of consent laws. NAMBLA used to march in these gay pride parades. I think on a practical level, they've never dropped that angle. Look at guys like Bryan Singer, or the guy who was the voice of Elmo. They were never charged with anything, but neither was Bill Cosby. Yet in the court of public opinion, he's considered a non-person now. So why isn't Bryan Singer out of work? It's because there is a cabal of very, very powerful people in the entertainment industry that engage in this shit, that cover it up. Corey Feldman, former child actor, talked about this. How child rape is rampant in Hollywood. It's no coincidence that Hollywood has never released a sincere, unflattering portrayal of what this lifestyle really is. Never. It's always idealized. Oh, look, they love each other. Their relationships are so much better than heterosexuals, and so on. You might not realize it, but NAMBLA already has a new face. I think NAMBLA still exists to some extent, but you know who exists to a very large extent, openly? And promotes the same kind of thing? Fuck hate. Fuck hate. Fuck hate is the new NAMBLA. Why are they so adamant about featuring children in their propaganda pieces? Why do they show children making out with each other? People who experienced proper sexual, emotional, spiritual development don't need to rely on children to make a point. Unless, of course, they're getting some sick kind of satisfaction from it. But we'll stop there. Do I watch any other wrestling besides WWE, and who's my favorite wrestler? I'm a pretty casual fan comparatively, so I don't follow other promotions too closely. I have watched some New Japan Pro Wrestling. I watched that a couple months ago because it was on TV, and I thought it was good, but it's not something I look for all the time. Though I will say a big part of what got me into watching wrestling was watching Dean Ambrose when he was wrestling as Jon Moxley with the various independent promotions, watching his promos and matches. I thought they were fantastic. So I like him a lot. And the other guys I like, Brock Lesnar and John Cena, but they're off TV right now. So it's not a whole lot of reason for me to be watching right now. Next, after watching Tumblerista's episode 40, mainly the guy with the anarchy and anti-religious patches, what are your thoughts on the heavy metal community? Is there a slippery slope when it comes to playing black metal, which some bands have satanic messages in them? Or is it just harmless fun unless they start burning churches to raise money for their shitty demo? These kids are trying to be too edgy for you, thinking that Satan will pay attention to them, just because they are wearing leather jackets and corpse paint. They give a bad name to the heavy metal community. Well, in assembling that episode, in recording that episode, I never thought, these metalheads, they're becoming a real problem. That That was never a thought that entered my mind. Kids who want to make Hail Satan music, I think it is a temper tantrum, and hopefully they'll grow out of it. Hopefully they'll start writing better lyrics. I don't know how common it is. I don't know much about black metal. I don't know much about metal at all. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I am familiar with some of the basics. I've listened to some of the big names to some extent, but yeah, it's not something that I have strong opinions about the music itself. I have seen Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath live. I've also seen Dragon Force and who else? I'm sure there are others, but they don't come to mind right now. What are your thoughts on veganism? I've noticed that you and those aligned with you often mock veganism, but I haven't heard a concrete explanation as to why veganism is wrong. Understand that a lot of people who describe themselves as vegan also describe themselves as liberal. And the reasons for why they are vegan are relatively stupid reasons like animal cruelty and having a moral objection to eating animal products. However, there is a slew of credible evidence showing that the exogenous hormones heme, iron, saturated fat, cholesterol, phthalates, I think that's right, IGF-1 and sulfur-containing amino acid contained in animal products are the cause of common chronic diseases like atherosclerosis, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, etc. Links to scholarly articles detailing this connection at the end of message. Additionally, comparison of the human digestive system with that of herbivorous, frugivorous, carnivorous, and omnivorous animals strongly suggests that humans are omnivorous only in behavior and not in biology. Humans have intestines thrice our body length and lack the enzyme uricase to break down uric acid, traits among others that no truly omnivorous or carnivorous animal has. Furthermore, animal agriculture uses a disproportionate amount of our clean water and farmland. Thank you for the email. I will say first that my issue with veganism is with those who follow it. They're usually the craziest people, the most annoying, shrill people you could possibly imagine in my experience. So that's why I have a negative view of it. I haven't looked too much into the health effects of a vegan diet. I haven't looked into the health benefits too much. I haven't looked into the health risks too much. Though I did see a headline this week about how a meatless diet puts you at a higher risk for mental illness. Again, that was just a headline. I don't know if the study that article was talking about was true. I don't know to what extent does it increase your risk of mental illness. I don't know. My issue with veganism, vegans. And if you haven't heard, California's having all these water problems, and the reason is because these farmers are taking these deals with the state who's giving them all this water, and they're using too much of it, despite the fact that agriculture, I think, only makes up, I hope I heard this right, it only makes up like 2 or 3% of the California economy. So I agree there are some problems associated with mass agriculture. But I've seen studies like you've provided that provide evidence in support of a vegan diet. I've also seen studies in support of an omnivorous diet. So I don't know enough about it to make a conclusion to fall on either side of it. So my assessment of veganism is it's based solely upon those who follow it, and that's it. That's the extent of my opinion. Okay, next, Kebab Remover here. Been listening to the show since May on and off. I really enjoy it. I can barely sleep at night, but with you bringing news of what is coming to us Eastern Europeans through collective westernization always makes my nights sleepless, so I'm able to study more. Sleep is for the weak. I like sleep. I guess I'm weak. I have no problem admitting that. I think that getting good sleep is one of the best things you can do. If you're in doubt, get some sleep. But if it doesn't work for you, whatever. I have no problem with that. About 5 months ago, I sent a message to your Facebook page, but then later I heard you don't check Facebook messages, so I'll transfer half of the message, which is actually meaningful to this email. The question I have is, why do you despise heathenry so much? Not heathenry as in queer, hail, meth, smoke, Satan kind of shit, but in the sense of what we call here, Rodoslavli. I don't know. I hope you say it's pronounced that way, but I could be pronouncing it wrong still. directly translated to kin worship, commonly known as paganism. It's silly to think that this would lead to anything but right-wing style of thinking, since kin worship is just that, honoring, respecting, and believing in your ancestors, in your blood, and protecting your blood above all else. In short, proto-nationalism. Originally, I was the most cuck person in Serbia, preaching about how all people are equal, and human rights are earned through birth. I stayed that way for about 5 years before I started getting into Slavic tradition, the tradition of my ancestors about 3 years ago. There I learned about merit-based reward systems, as well as some values which instantly blew my mind. Paganism was my red pill, and from what I saw, it is and can be the red pill for almost anyone with European ancestry. So why hate on this? It's obvious that people such as Varg, whatever the fuck his last name is, strive to defend their homeland, and by the way, yes, I know it's Helsinki. I know. And defend their tradition and culture. Calling them degenerates or edgy really serves no purpose other than those people giving up fighting the good fight entirely. From your point of view, yes, it is stupid to be pagan. The short history of the US bases itself on Christianity, but Europe has far more to it than an Abrahamic religion, which is one of the main reasons why we have problems with degeneracy in the first place. The only Christian branches, which actually fight degeneracy rather than hope to accept it, with the goal of them being accepted by the world, are Central and Eastern European devout Catholics. Let me stop right here. I'm sick of fucking hearing this meme. Why is it the most secular Western European nations are also the most culturally enriched? And also, these are home to state churches where the state takes precedent over the church. The state, that's what it's loyal to. Not to Jesus, not to God. It's no shock that anybody who gets baptized in these churches, like for example the Church of Sweden, no one actually believes in God in the Church of Sweden. Yeah, according to Sweden's official website, only 1 in 10 Swedes thinks religion is important in daily life, despite the fact that around 7 out of 10 children are christened in the Church of Sweden. And this idea that kin worship can't be perverted, can't be corrupted like the teachings of Christ have been perverted. Well, guess what? Kin worship, all it takes is one belligerent to point out the atrocities that your ancestors committed and make you feel guilty about it, and all of a sudden it collapses. This is the Achilles heel of filtering everything through ancestry and race. Once you find one imperfection, once you find one unjust act, people will be like, well, it's all false. Let's be masochists now. And that's precisely what has happened. Anyway, continuing with the email, the only Christian branches which actually fight degeneracy rather than hope to accept it with the goal of them being accepted by the world are Christian and Eastern European devout Catholics as well as Orthodox Christians, which are nothing but pagans dressed up as Oriental-style Christians, worshipping saints which have deep roots within local pagan cultures. Look, I don't believe in this purity of religion. I think that religion tends to take on, whether it's conscious of it or not, characteristics of where it lives. You know, it's not the purity that I'm concerned about, it's the end goal. And as far as I'm concerned, last I checked, the saints don't take precedent over Christ. And look, for the sake of fairness, yeah, the churches of Western Europe, they are treacherous. But they are loyal to secular forces first and foremost, which indicates that something is wrong with the Western European psyche. You can't have a high-trust society without loyalty. It just doesn't work. A friend of the world is the enemy of God. This is a fact. The world is under the jurisdiction of Satan, which is why we live in an age of moral inversion. Why probably every age is an age of moral inversion. People tell me these churches they're taking in refugees are complicit. These aren't churches. They're not interested in protecting children of God. Their loyalties are not with God, but with the state. That is not a church. That is a government office. They are not loyal to God. They are not loyal to God's children, but they are loyal to the state and the state's children. The state is a friend of the world. The state is an enemy of God. There's just something inherently treacherous about the Western European psyche. I don't know why. Probably because they see this trust and they exploit it. They see this trust that people place in their fellow man and they exploit it. And I've been a victim of this treachery. Okay, next. Hey, Common Filth, long-time listener, first-time writer? Sure, that works. I've listened to the majority of your Common Filth radio episodes, going back to, I think, around 13 or 14 or so, as well as all of your Tumblrista episodes, and I think I've watched all your Vine marathons as well. Well, that puts you in the minority. Suffice it to say, I'm familiar with your work and a huge fan of what you do. I found it interesting back in episode 64 that you mentioned someone had sent you a link to a James White presentation. I've been listening to Dr. White for years and his Dividing Line podcast from Alpha and Omega Ministries, and if you liked what he did in the gay Christianity movement presentation you linked to, you'll love his 5-hour refutation of Matthew Vine's gay Christianity movement. He also has 2 channels, the one you linked to and the main account. He has a ton of moderated public debates on Islam, secularism, Mormonism, Catholicism, just about every topic relevant to defending Christianity against any criticism you can imagine. In relation to homosexuality, he's debated people like Barry Lynn, John Shelby Spong, and other big names. Definitely worth your time to listen through. I know you're a busy man. I've been meaning to send you some links to his stuff for a while, and hearing it brought up by you jogged my memory, so I'm including more stuff. I would also highly recommend his book, The Same-Sex Controversy, in which he co-authored with Jeff Neal. There's a Kindle version available if you prefer digital. Anyway, outside all that, I've had several questions I've wanted to ask over the past several months, but I've never taken the time to ask. But I figure I'll just do one at a time here. As it so happens, I'm one of those people you seem to detest. I speak of no other profession than a high school teacher, though I worked many other jobs before moving into that career path. And I teach government, economics, U.S. and world history, and geography as well. Now, to be fair, I teach in a small private Christian school. Even in that setting, I know there are kids that are already on the verge of going full SJW when they get out. Not many, but they are there. I think you and I are both in agreement that there is a lot of bullshit that goes on in academia that passes for teaching when all it is nothing but propaganda for the left. Fortunately, the curriculum we use is very matter-of-fact and tries to keep things in a historical context and doesn't try to shove an agenda down anyone's throat as far as I can tell. For example, the Indians here weren't perfectly peaceful that Whitey just decided to slaughter because he hated everyone who didn't look like him, and Whitey didn't just decide to adopt slavery for shits and giggles. In fact, as far as the Civil War is concerned, I've been grateful that the book spent an entire chapter and a half almost explaining the multitude of reasons why slavery was not the only reason for the war, but that tariffs and politics in general were crucial factors. It's all good stuff. My question for you is this. On one hand, I absolutely detest what has been going on in the public school system, which is why I refuse to work in that system. As far as I'm concerned, it's probably too far gone to do anything about it. But at this point, and the more people start going into private education, the better. You and I both agree that there is a lot of propaganda being forced on students. I find myself, though, being really torn in how to present certain things. History, not so much an issue, but in government and economics, there is so much ignorance with young people as far as current events in economics that it's staggering. However, I don't want to end up going down the road of just becoming propaganda for the right. For example, I gave a lecture on how media can affect public opinion or elections. And so I went on for about 15 to 20 minutes, giving example after example of how the media distorts reality and used Trayvon and Michael Dindu as examples, as well as this Ahmed the Clock Kid douchebag. Many of these kids are clueless because, like me, they weren't paying attention at that age. Though, as good Jonah Goldberg has pointed out, if kids really are the future, it's our job to point out to them why they're so wrong about everything, since nothing is tied closer to stupidity than age. So where do you draw the line? At what point does it stop being, look guys, this is how the world works, so you better get ready for it, otherwise you're going to end up just like just another useful idiot. And when does it become no better than what the left does, but in the opposite extreme? Anyway, love your show, and I've even used some of your material in class as far as explaining the evolution of voting rights, how that developed, etc. You're also the only other person I know of besides Frederick Bastiat, probably wrong pronunciation. Look, I know I've seen these names, I just never bother to look into the pronunciation. It is a failing on my part. It is laziness. It is a sin, but There you go. Back during the French Revolution, who says that universal suffrage might not be such a great idea. Total breath of fresh air. At any rate, sorry for the long email, but I'd appreciate hearing your opinion on the matter, even though I know you don't have the greatest view of teachers in general. But not all of us are brain-dead lefties, and some of us are actually trying to do some good by combating that crap. Keep up the good work. I recently listened to a clip saying that not all X are like this, not all teachers are like this, that I said. And yeah, I do hold that view. It's just the overwhelming majority of teachers do work in the public sector, and the overwhelming majority of teachers do teach pretty much the opposite of what you seek to achieve, which is relative objectivity with regard to the subjects you are in charge of teaching. But what you're doing in the classroom, it isn't the other side of the same coin. We're not talking about a coin. We're talking about something completely different. You don't tell one detail of the story and then jump to conclusions with it. For example, Trayvon Martin. He was killed by a white guy. This is an example of white heterogeneity and how they want to kill all people of color. That's the conclusion that the gatekeepers jumped to, without considering the fact that Trayvon Martin was beating the shit out of George Zimmerman, and also George Zimmerman isn't white. And I think the reason these details are left out is because of how retard childlike people are. The underdeveloped baby brains of the world that we deal with on a constant basis, we deal with them every day. They can't accept that situations are shitty and the solutions to them can never be perfect. Some things suck, some things are bad, some things are not perfect. It's nothing really has a happy ending. Baby brains you're dealing with. Everyone. People who think that when a movie ends, well, that's just the end. And they think life is like a movie. They think there's the good guy, the bad guy, beginning, middle, end, happily ever after. So no, providing every detail that can possibly be provided in a given situation, that's not pushing an agenda. Because you'll find that if you provide all of the details, there really is no agenda to be pushed unless you omit several important details, like with the case of Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown. Many details were left out. Many. And in the mind of the general public, the details that are left out, well, the details are never there. An agenda is only created if details are left out. If alternate, though real perspectives are excluded, unexplored. Okay, we got an Ask FM question, and then we will say goodbye. Long episode. Great job, everyone. Great job. Hands, clap your hands. Hi, CF, I have a question. Is being offended over the embarrassment of being corrected in a public place really ridiculous? I was asked, who the fuck gets offended over being corrected? I was told I was being ridiculous for feeling offended over such a thing. Is it really ridiculous? Honestly. Well, I don't think it's the taking offense to being corrected that you should be offended over. I mean, if they're being an asshole about it, I can understand why you take offense, but it sounds like a petty matter, and with regard to petty matters, you should turn the other cheek. And that's what Christ was talking about when he said that. He's not saying give up your homeland to invaders. That is not turning the other cheek, because that is not a petty concern. There is nothing petty about protecting God's children, and that's what we should all do. And destroy Satan's children. Do not forgive God's enemies. With that being said, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later.